Hello everyone, welcome to POM in Oz. Hope we're all doing really well. If you're new around here, hit that like button, hit that subscribe. It really helps the channel out. Can't thank you enough for the support. And if you want to become a member, link is in the description to that. Got a load of mid-season draft content coming up as well. So we'll have a bit of a chat around that. Probably do a little live members watch along for that. So we can have a bit of a chat and a discussion. But first, we've got to get through this. And it's Carlton. They went down this week to the Sydney Swans. High flying they are. 52-point loss, 117 plays, 65. And it was a game that was really, before we get into the numbers, and the numbers are quite damning. We said it in the preview that you've got to come in here, you've got to play with a little bit of urgency. You've got to hurry them up off halfback. It's our forward pressure versus their elite rebounding off halfback. And you've got to make sure that you really make it tough for them. And the first quarter they did. They look to create options. They look to move the ball quickly by hand and foot, and that's really important against Sydney. You don't want to get into a situation where you give them a lot of time and a lot of uncontested and not hurry them up. And the Blues failed to do that from about 2 minutes into the second till the end of the game. And I don't want to be too hard on them, but that game there really, for me, encapsulated what worries me about this side. And I know the injuries are mounting up and things, but there was not much change in this game. Kennedy stayed on one and nearly 99.9% of the game. That wasn't working. The game was there to be won at half-time. I know Whittaker went down, but to move both of your key forwards into defensive positions when they are probably your only avenues to goal with the inside 50 entries that you are presenting, it's really chaotic, and it felt in the second half, particularly the fourth, it felt to me more like a side that was going out there not to lose massively as opposed to a side that potentially is trying to win and snatch the game. And I've said this, I've been consistent. I am quite happy to lose games by 300 if you are going into the game. And Wazze said it himself. There is a certain standard that is expected 4 weeks ago, he did. And he said it again, reiterated it pre-season. When you put the Guernsey on, regardless of injuries, there is an expectation level. And this week, the tackle numbers, the pressure numbers, all the things that Wazze builds this side around, which, whether I agree or not, is totally a different thing, they weren't met. And we have to be honest here. And I don't want to be harsh on individual players because I feel like I'm going to be constructive here. I'm going to say how I think that they can rebuild and rebrand that. But the biggest question for me is the first 4 rounds, I stand by this. That was my favourite football we played. A team that would slingshot off halfback and a team that would look to concede stoppage and clearance, particularly when you look at some of them games. Although we lost the stoppage and clearance count, the scores we generated off the back half of the ground from them were absolutely astronomical. Now we've tried to focus on stoppage and clearance. The defensive half is going down for us, but these kicks to nothing from stoppage and clearance are coming back with abundance. And that was blatantly obvious this game with their ability to turn over. Most of them came from them areas of just kick and hopes from the stoppage and clearance. And when the forward and the midfield pressure, certainly we talk about that all there, isn't there, comes back with interest. And at times it was way too easy for Sydney. And the Blues have got to look at that because I said it in my preview, Sydney are the benchmark statistically of what you want to be. And when application isn't there, when the E-word effort is certainly not there, particularly the effort-based numbers, you get found out by these good sides. And that is one that they're going to have to cop because the effort and the energy levels, for a want of a better word for me, were deplorable in the second half. And I don't think many players come off the ground there. And that's okay. Sometimes it happens. But feel like at times there's habitual not protecting the players with your structure. And people talk about the structure. You saw a total structural breakdown this week. And when we talk about good structures, it's hard to break them down because players know their roles. And Wazze said it himself. Players know their roles. And this week, if they were playing their roles, which I have no doubt they were, the matchups were lopsided and in favour of Sydney. And Sydney really exploited it incredibly well. Incredibly well. The way that Chad Warner didn't do anything special. He just ghosted. And you heard Alex Cincotta say it himself in the interview with me. One of the prime moves for good players is they lose you in around stoppage and clearance. And Chad Warner baited Carlton into going into the contest, and at times we had the outnumber in the contest, particularly in them contested situations. But because we had the outnumber in the furnace, they had the outnumber in the open. They had them overloads that they create. And Carlton's endeavour this week was really, really safe. And that seems to be the new one. Don't know if anyone's ever played Tiger Woods Golf 99 on the PC. There used to be a green button and a red button. The green button would be like, play it safe. Then you press the red button and it'd be, go for it. Carlton pressed the green button all the time. In fact, I think the mouse didn't work on the red button. And that is this system. This system is built around taking risk. And when the risk isn't there, the reward isn't there, but the punishment is blatantly abundant. And this week, it was really hard to watch for me. It's really hard. I've watched the game twice now. I didn't like it. I'm going to be totally honest. I didn't like it. But let's see where it went wrong. And you can see here, negative 37 for the Blues from stoppage. And you know what is funny? If you actually look at how we set up, we set up to negate stoppage, and to lose by plus 12 for them to have a 12 input, and Carlton to play very defensive around stoppage and be negative 37 says it all. And tactically, this was very poor. Structurally, this was very poor. I mean, if I had to grade our tactics around stoppage and clearance, it would be a 0. And that's only because I don't believe in a plateaued scale below 0. I think once you say 0, it's enough. And that was really poor. And you look at the turnover here. Carlton generated more turnover because there was more opposite. And they negated their turnover. Still quite high. It's still in the upper echelons. But this is where it really worries me. The defensive half generation, there was a real focus here with the way that Carlton have been setting up the last 2 weeks that this had to be down. And the problem was the turnovers weren't down here. They were in the back half, the rebounding area, and Carlton were deplorable with their ball movement in the back half. And it was a little bit like Geelong. Marchbank, I don't want to pick on him, but you only have to watch his VFL. What he did against Casey, he did here. Put the boys under pressure with slow, lethargic movement at times. So did a few of them. They didn't want to get the ball out, didn't want to take the risk. Even Boyd suffered from it, going at 90%, but some of them kicks were safe kicks. We needed that injection, and Mitch McGovern was really bad in this situation where he'd spilled the map because he'd already spent it. He'd already seen the kick he wanted, and he didn't execute the basics. And this was really basic forward football. We talked about the forward 50 entries of Sydney. They're not a huge marking side. They like to bring the ball down and play it, and that's how Carlton defend. This week, Carlton really had the best option when Whittaker went down. They're all spoil heavy. The ground ball defense this game was absolutely useless. It was like trying to ask a fucking snake to fly at times, and it ain't happening. And it was limp. It was really limp, and it was really poor. And this is where we've got to look here, because I don't buy into the injuries in the terms of there is players that, okay, they're not as good, but you can still play a system. Chincotta's one of the fastest players. He is the fastest player at the club. Sardi's up there in the top 3. Why isn't he playing there? Like, when Nick Newman has done a lockdown job majority of his career for the Blues, why don't you go like for like and try and shift the magnets, try and change it? Because the back half was looking slow and laconic, and it was inviting the pressure from a very good midfield-based pressure side that hemmed us in. It's no surprise they create repeat inside 50s. Most of their inside 50s that didn't work became back and repeat. And we'll see a number in a minute that will absolutely break you down. And that is worrying. And we talk about pressure-based side. Carlton, do you know what I mean? Plus 17 on pressure acts. But look at the tackles. Do you know what I mean? Look at the tackles. Down by 5.2. And for a team that hold the majority of the ball, Sydney increased their tackle numbers. We always say that the pressure acts have got to start converting. For Carlton to be down and increase their pressure acts says it all. And the tackles inside 50 count for a forward pressure-based side is appalling. It is appalling, really. Sydney, basically, the stats here showing you Sydney did what they did all the time. And that would indicate there a lack of preparation, a lack of understanding, a lack of game awareness from the boys. And that one really hurts, because I feel like just the basic linears of what I expect from a professional football side weren't there. And Yes, you have bad days at the office. Do you know what I mean? You do. But it is a pattern that emerges when it gets a little bit tough from the boys, that a few is expected from just a minority of the team. And at times people were watching Cripps in stoppages, not backing him up. Kennedy and Hewitt were guilty of this. Walsh blazing away at times because the movement in front of him was deplorable, but the running with him was deplorable. It was the easy options. And you watch how Sydney, particularly in that third quarter when they got a real resurgence on it, players are running ahead of the ball carrier expecting the ball to come. Carlton sitting back expecting the ball to be turned over. You've got to be risky. You've got to risk it for your biscuit. And if you want to be a middle-of-the-road team, do middle-of-the-road things. If you want to be good, though, prepare to lose. And I felt like we weren't willing to lose. We were willing to try and keep it. And this says it all for me. Marks inside 50, the entries were woeful. But look at this, the efficiency from them versus ours. Down 10% on scores per inside 50, down 10% for goals, down 10% nearly for marks. The entries were so shallow that they were asking for defensive half turnovers. And the Blues weren't willing to take that. It was rushed. It was rushed. There was no overlap run this weekend. They have the personnel. You saw it against Melbourne. These numbers were fairly in the positive. And Melbourne are an incredibly good side structurally as well. So it was a real energyless performance. And breaks my heart a little bit because honestly, I felt like we were beyond looking at just basics. And when Voss comes out with them fighting words, I expect the players to listen. I understand that you can have a bad day, but that's nowhere near the level. It's nowhere near the level. And these ones here are where the damage is done. Plus 35 on one-on-ones lost against a side that doesn't structurally do pretty well. Carlton's down on 10 because of their entries being woeful. The intercept marks, for a team that played 4 intercept defenders to be down by that much with the most intercept potential, that number predicted is plus 7. That's worrying. That's worrying because it means you didn't play to the game plan. It means you didn't execute. And the rebound 50 rate, they were worse at their rebound 50 rate than they've ever been this year. It's one of their worst performances in that avenue. Look at the numbers don't match up. And that's because for a forward-based pressure side, you need to be creating repeat stoppages, which they did. They did so well. Repeat inside 50 entries. They did so well all the time throughout the game. And the Blues couldn't capitalize on it. And that's where you've got to be bold and industrious with it. And the teams that have had success against Sydney, even weak teams, they've taken the game on. And you've got to take your game on. And that felt really, really poor for me. Really poor. It upset me. And you look here, like this number here just scares you the most. When you look at the players that performed above what they're expected, and when you've got someone in the top 5 that has almost done what you'd expect them to do versus them, that's deadly. That paints its own system there. And it's back to the drawing board for me. And I want to see more changes. I want to see us be more bold. I want to see the Blues really take the game on. They're capable of taking the game on. And yes, injuries are an extent, but Orazio, Durden, again, in probably our worst. You've got to try something different. Voss wants people playing roles and people being determined. And even Ollie Hollands, my boy, I love him. But last week, you know what? He got caught a few times, but he took the game on. This week, it looked like someone had said to him in the coach's box, don't take the game on. Don't take the risk. And I'd love the club to tell me why they don't take the risks at times. Whose idea it is to be safe. Because when you're going to be safe and when you're going to play the percentages, 2 facts about this Blues team. When they play the percentages, worst side in the league. If Carlton were the benchmark of playing percentages, no one would play the fucking percentages, right? Carlton are the anomaly to the rule because when they play safe, they can't do it. And that's because I don't think they're very quick thinking. I don't think they're very intuitive with the ball. So playing the percentages is great if you've got that. But then also the second, the chaos ball is how we play. It suits us. When we're playing quick, when we're playing to our skills, when we're playing on instinct, we look quite good. And it's very easy to knock that out of the Blues when we said Sydney are willing to go toe-to-toe and bully you. And this was the big difference for me versus GWS and Sydney. 2 sides that play very good football. GWS a little bit more wet behind the ears. They don't like the dirty stuff. Sydney do. And as soon as we started trying to bully them, they were like, all right, cool. come and play football with us. And we got to find out. And there's a lot of work to do. And I'm looking forward to doing the 5 things that we learned, because there's about 50. But all in all, it was a poor performance. And there's no glossing it up. There's no glossing it up. Can we fix it? Yes, we can. We can. And they've done it before. They've played a lot worse, and I've been a lot more disappointed. But I feel like a disappointed dad this week, because I expect better with the personnel out there. And they're a lot better than what they performed. It's not the level. It's not the level. And we can't beat around the bush. You can talk about short turnarounds in the injury list, but these are professional footballers. If my steak isn't cooked medium rare, couldn't give a fuck if he's been in the job a day or he's been in 20 years. I expect it medium rare. So you go back and you do it. And this week it felt like a lot of players left the ground. And I don't know why the energy levels were low, because I felt like this was a big game. A big game. And I appreciate the SCG, but is smaller people saying all this? I don't buy that, man. The stats don't lie. Teams don't lie. You can do what you can do at the SCG. And you could play on a fucking basketball court. Effort isn't length. Effort comes from here. Effort comes from the heart. Comes from passion and desire. And when we're off, we're really off. And that's one thing that this game really taught me. Our worst is bad. And the old saying in golf, if you make your misses good misses, you'll improve. And we still have our misses that are 200 metres right of our target line in the shrub. And that needs to improve. And it's the same players putting in the effort, and it's the same players that go missing in these games. And that is a big concern for the Blues, because go back to what you were good at in the first 4. Shelve this stoppage and clearance thing, because you create the natural scores off defensive half when you're not dominating. And the Blues have got to find a way there. They've got to protect the players structurally. You've got to create the matchups, favourable matchups. And I felt like we played into Sydney's game, and I'm very disappointed. I'm trying not to lose it. I'm trying not to rant. I'm trying not to punch walls. But you know what? This is cathartic for me. I needed this. So peace, love and light. Let me know your thoughts. We move, we dust ourselves on, and we fight Gold Coast, who have got their tails wagging at the minute. They're going to be a tough ask. But all in all, you wanted a benchmarker, and you know where the benchmark is. And a lot of work to do on the training track. Go Blues. Peace, love and light. We go again.
Rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots and a sexy body full of tats. Baby